Hey everyone, this is Brad Bowman from Heaven's Metal Magazine, and this is a video interview I did of Paul Roraback a few weeks ago. Should have been out sooner. We had some technical difficulties and some other issues pop up. I was just able to get this thing edited together. So I hope you enjoy this. Look into the world of Paul Roraback and the new album from him, PJ Bostic's Faith of Least Resistance, an amazing progressive metal album. My review of it is up on Heaven's Metal Magazine, so check this thing out. Get it off of his website. We will put that up in the comments below on the YouTube page, and I'll also just put it here on the lower third. So enjoy this interview. I have cut myself out of the interview. My microphone was sounding pretty awful, so I do put my questions up. But at the very end, we start talking about influences and start geeking out about our common interest in music. And you'll hear me interject some stuff in there. So if you hear some laughter in the back with my whiny, tinny voice, you'll know what that is. So enjoy the interview. I know I did. I really enjoyed getting to know him and talking with him.
Just entertainment to pass the time.
When I was really young, I was alone a lot. And I was a lonely kid, and music it really did something for me. Like, it just took me somewhere. Music has always been about putting me in a better place. And I would stand with a tennis racket in front of a mirror and jam out to my first album, which was Yellow Brick Road. Like, Elton John's one of my biggest vocal influences. I love Elton John, man. And I was back then, we had the tape decks, the old ones with all the buttons that were on one end, and it had like one speaker, And I had a tree fort, willow tree in my backyard, and my dad didn't know it was there. When he found it, he would always make me take it down, and then I would just build it again, But I took this tape deck and I stole it from my brother. He was gone, and it said Tom Petty on it, and so I put it in, and I was listening to it, and I heard this beautiful voice and this waterfalls and this music, and I thought it was Tom Petty. And I was like, who is this beautiful voice? And so I thought I was into Tom Petty. So I was about 12, maybe 11. And for the next couple of years, I was getting all these Tom Petty 8-tracks and albums and stuff. And I couldn't find that song. And then, late 13, I became a drummer, and someone told me to check out Rush. So the radio station was playing Rush, and back then you'd record off the radio so I was recording, and suddenly I hear that voice, and it was Discovery from 2112. I hear the waterfalls and the guitars, and I hear that beautiful voice. I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought it was Tom Petty, but it was Rush. And from then on, it was just, I just got Rush instantly, and so I started buying all their records and became a Rush fan. And Rush, it's funny because I saw the documentary Beyond the Lighted Stage, and I had no idea that I had so much in common with them on a personal level. And, I've told people, like, if I told Pete in Grammatrain once, I said, because we see things differently a lot, in the band. We would kind of, he's coming from like the Doors, I'm coming from Rush, And when that came out, I said, it would really mean a lot to me if you would watch this documentary, because it would help you to understand me and where I'm coming from. Because when we were signed, there was I pushed back a lot with the label. I also took for granted what they did for us. I want to give them credit. They did a lot for us, but I pushed back a lot. But anyway, I had no idea that their thought on the purity of music and the integrity and how music is supposed to come from here. And it's not about trying to write the hit song, it's about the experience. That's me. I just love the experience of music, and I would love to pay my bills. I used to want to be famous, but I don't really enjoy that part of it, to be honest. But it was never about really the money and fame. At least that was never the main thing for me. It was always about the music for me. Well, I was a Bloodgood fan too, and I was in a band called Paragon, which is actually how I met Doug. He actually wrote some reviews about Paragon back in the day, and we never necessarily went anywhere, but for a local band, we were very popular in our area, and we got some national attention. But we got to warm up for Bloodgood. And that's how I met Les and the gang. And I'll tell you, man, Les Carlson, I was really impressed. I got two good stories about Les that I'd love to share, just because it shows the nature of who he is in Bloodgood. And one of them was, I'm this naive kid, and we're playing at the Moore Theater. And in our minds, our naive minds were like, this is our ticket to the big time. After this, this is just going to pave the way for fame, So I was confused, and they had finished sound checking, and the stage manager came out and said, okay, you want to bring your gear out? And I look, and I didn't see a drum riser. I go, do I get a drum riser? And the guy, and the stage manager, I think he worked for the Moore Theater, was kind of laying into me and treating me kind of weird about it. And I just didn't know. I would have been fine with just setting up, but I was just like, and it was a very short encounter, but Les happened to be walking by in the middle of it. And he goes, what's going on? He's like, oh, this guy wants a drum riser. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. I just was asking. I didn't know. And he's like, well, the warm-up band doesn't, and it was this thing. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I was scared to death. And Les just goes, shush, 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 shush. And he points at me and he goes, do you want a drum riser? And I go, sure. And then he points at the stage manager and he goes, give him a drum riser. And he walks away. I was like, right on. And they also told the sound guy, they said, don't do this thing where you give the opening band a crappy mix. The sound engineer told me this. He said, they told me to give you a good mix, and they did. And that made a huge impact on me of the kind of person I want to be in the business. Him and Todd Zuckerman from Styx is another person that's had an influence on me of how I would like to act towards people in the business. The other encounter, and this is paved the way, I guess, to be in the band. When I was in Paragon, being the promiscuous, messed up Christian that I was, not entirely promiscuous, but I had my weaknesses, and I got somebody pregnant. It's my daughter is the girl that's on the Lonely House cover. And Bloodgood contacted me, Les called me, and they really liked my drumming. He asked if I would want to be in the band. And I said, man, my life's a mess right now. I just got somebody pregnant, and Paragon's taking some time off for me to just figure my life out and get my act together and figure out what we're going to do. And it would be really uncool for me to ditch those guys when they're doing this. And they didn't kick me out, and you probably don't want my problems in your band right now. And we talked for a bit, but at the end of the conversation, he said, I'm going to paraphrase something along the lines of, people make mistakes, people sin. If you change your mind, let me know. There's no condemnation here. We're not judging. And I expected Les to be like, well, you need to rethink your life. I mean, are you even a Christian? I don't know, just what you get sometimes from the church then. And so that was my second experience with that. And then I was taking vocal lessons a few years later. Kevin Whistler ended up joining at that point. But then later I was taking vocal lessons from Joyce Carlson, Les's wife. And I don't say this very often, but this was one time when God really, I just knew there was just something. And I asked Les, I said, is Bloodgood looking for a drummer these days? What are they doing? She's like, yeah, they're looking for a drummer. And I go, well, tell them I'm available and I'm interested, And even through the audition process and stuff, I was even telling my wife, I said, there's not out of arrogance or confidence. It was a God thing. I said, I know that I'm the guy for this. And I know that I just feel like I'm going to get the gig because this just feels right. It feels really, really right. And I remember we rehearsed and they tried me out, and they were looking at some other guys that I really respected. And so they said, well, let us talk for a second. And I walk away and I'm, trying to hear what they're saying. And I heard Paul Jackson kind of just go, well, let's just go with this guy. And I was like, oh man, I hope that's what they do. So sure enough, they called me and I got the gig, and I hadn't really traveled, and it was really exciting for me to be with these guys that were my heroes. We'd go camping and hike 2 miles up a mountain, and I had a boombox on my shoulder and we were cranking Bloodgood, that was our band. So yeah, I got to be in the band for a couple of years, and we toured America and toured some really big shows in Europe, playing for 3,000 or 4,000 people, which was amazing and scary. And yeah, they just kind of ended up being a family for me on the road. It's amazing how tight everybody is. I mean, it's a family.
Now you're on the Live from Germany record, aren't you? That's you, like,
Yeah.
isn't it?
I'll give you a little trivia there. This is a funny story. If you listen to the very beginning, you'll notice the snare. There's two hits missing. Instead of doom ka doom doom ka, you just hear doom 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 ka doom doom. I remember that night clearly. And I didn't know we were recording. We were eating and we were just hanging out, and suddenly we hear blah blah blah. Ladies and gentlemen, da 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 da, and we're like, oh, we're supposed to go on. So we're all hustling out there, and it's pitch black. And Bride was warming up for us. And I told my drum tech, I said, okay, so let me know if he changes anything on the kit, because I'd like to come out and fix it with you. He was real good at setting up my kit, but I would always kind of, do the finishing touches. And so I go out there and it's pitch black. I can't see a thing. I sit behind the kit and Paul Jackson starts. And then I come in for the and the snare drum was like this tall and I hit the rims. And I'm like, it was just like, ah! And so then I'm like, and I go to hit the ride and it's like way out here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how tall is this guy? And then the second hit the rim again. And I'm just like, then I had to focus on, and I couldn't fix it for 3 songs. Those first 3 songs, I was playing on this kit that was just whacked out. And I was so like, I tried to burn holes into my drum tech with my eyeballs. I remember looking at him and just, if only I could shoot lasers through him right now. So as soon as he started talking, I'm lowering the snare and I'm saying, Harold, get up here, blah, 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 fix this, blah, blah. We're like trying to put everything back. So listen to it again.
That's
and
great.
You won't hear those snare hits. And you can just picture me back there freaking out and panicking and being angry. The day before they called me, if somebody had asked me, would you ever see yourself playing with One Bad Pig? I would have said, not really. Because, well, we've been friends for a long time. When I was in Bloodgood, we were playing a festival and we went to Denny's or something. We were hanging out with One Bad Pig. And even though I wasn't into the punk scene, I still remember seeing their cassette tapes in stores. And I thought it was really cool that I was hanging out with One Bad Pig. I'm like, this is so cool. Because I was new to the scene. I was meeting everybody, And so when I moved to Austin, Daniel and I, and Lee and I became friends. And I was chatting with Daniel about this. And I told him how excited I was to be hanging out with One Bad Pig. And he said, that's funny, because I was sitting there thinking about how excited I was that I'm hanging out with Bloodgood, And so we had this mutual admiration for each other. And we just sort of became friends. But they called me one day and they did a conference call. And they asked me about doing some shows with them. And they had some talks about, maybe doing a record with them. And chatting with these guys on the phone and pondering it, it was like the Bloodgood thing. It felt so right. It just felt like the right thing to do. It felt great. And I was just really excited about this. And God doesn't always tell me when I'm supposed to do something. He's more in, he speaks to me more when I'm making a decision that I'm not supposed to do. He'll give me sort of a pit in my state, and I'll always do it. But sometimes there's this kind of you can call it a gut feeling, but he's trained me like a dog. If I'm feeling that, I don't do it. And but yeah, that was just one of those times he said, yes, do this. And it was great. It was really, really great. It was a lot of fun. I permanently injured my hand right here. The last song I was recording was a fast song, and it was just like, and I'm playing, and my hand hurt. And I'm just like, ow, ow, ow. I'm like, I gotta finish the song. And I did it. I'm like, album's done. Yes, And I looked, and there was a bump the size of a golf ball right here. And I still, one of these days, I'll go to a hand doctor and get it figured out. But I think of them a lot when I'm playing my drums, because after about an hour or two, it starts hurting. But it's a little memory from those guys. Well, I was playing with Michael Bloodgood it was like a Bible study thing, and we were called the Ozone Players, and we just played all these fun songs. We would take covers, and we knew it was cheesy, but it was still fun. We would turn the songs around and make them Christian. It was just this big, fun, cheesy thing we did. And Mike has this great sense of humor, and so through Dave Safiro, he knew Pete, so he got Pete in this band and me, and Pete and I just sort of connected. And we started writing some music together. And my brother Dalton was living in a room down in my basement. And so Pete and I had kind of started writing and stuff, and I thought, well, let's just let Dalton jam with us, and I didn't think Dalton would be interested, so I really didn't bring it up. Dalton's really talented. That guy can play music, or he can do like really high-tech computer kind of stuff. He's a pretty amazing guy. I've always envied that because I never really had the choice. I've always felt like music is all I can do, and I really pretty much suck at everything else. But so we invited to come jam with us, and the connection in this little tiny basement was amazing, and the energy when we were jamming, we just all loved it. And it wasn't long before we were practicing 4 nights a week, and we were gigging every weekend. So the band just got really, really tight. And I mean, we were signed within a year. We did a little demo with Aaron Sprinkle, and I think I don't know if it was Way FM, someone in Nashville was playing it, and all these record labels started calling me. And we kind of had our choice out of not everybody, but out of quite a few. And Eddie DeGarmo was the only one that actually, he was really pushing, and he came out and met with us and saw us play. And Eddie and I kind of went round and round because I was very protective of the band, and it took him a while to convince me that he wasn't going to try to turn us into Audio Adrenaline, or something. Now, I'm not saying they're bad. Please don't think I'm saying anything bad about them. Just that we're not Audio Adrenaline. We're not a pop band, not a pop rock band or whatever. We were a heavy grunge band, and some of the songs we wrote were long, and we wanted to keep our integrity. So, we signed with Forefront, and for the most part, they treated us really well. I think I tended to focus more on promises made that weren't kept, or not, maybe not promises, but the things they were trying to do and said they would do. I tended to focus more on those things than the things that they said they would do that they did do. And they did a lot of really good things for us. And being protective as I was of the integrity of the band, there was a little bit of tension sometimes, because there was a little bit of this pressure to kind of turn us into what their version of what they wanted Grammatrain to be. And it was terrible for Pete, because he's, losing his sanity, going, I don't know if I'm writing for you or for the label or for me, or, and I really wanted to encourage him just to always write from here for himself, whatever that was. I never meant to try to get him to be rushed or anything, but we tried to keep all that stuff honest, So when Dalton, he quit the band to solve some problems that his wife was causing. I won't get into that, but there was some problems with her, and he needed to go try to straighten out this thing. They are now divorced. And it's a bummer for Dalton, because he's a really sweet guy, and he really didn't deserve what he went through, So we tried to find a couple different people, and it just never felt right. And Forefront made Pete an offer, and he's probably looking at Grammatrain going, I don't think this is going anywhere, because we can't find anybody, and I can go do a solo record with Forefront. So, I probably would have done the same thing, so. That just kind of ended that. I was devastated personally. I just felt like my life was over, and I was really, really depressed. I was in my 30s, and just full confession here, I got drunk for the first time in my life, which most people don't believe that when they would meet me and I would tell them I'd never been drunk before, they would never believe me. But I just didn't care. I was really upset and angry, and I drank, and I regretted it. Oh, I regretted it. It was not a good night for me. And I got so sick. I slept out on the porch of this apartment building we were on because I was so sick, and it was cold outside, but I just couldn't be inside. And then I had vertigo the next day. And I was thrown up, not from the hangover, but I get vertigo often. And apparently alcohol can trigger that, especially if it messes with your sleep patterns. So I had vertigo, and I couldn't get out of bed. And there was a Grammatrain gig we had to do, a festival. And so Pete and Dalton actually got someone else to do the gig. And I felt ashamed. I was just so ashamed of myself because we're still finishing out our gigs that we had booked, even though the band had broken up, And I just remember feeling so ashamed that I got drunk and it interfered with my career as a musician. Like I couldn't do a show because of this. And I just can't tell you how much I was hurting over that, how that made me, I was so mad at myself. I felt like I'd let my friends down and our fans down. I mean, they didn't know, but now they know. This is the first time I think I've talked about it openly like this. But it was terrible. I don't recommend it. So my friend Michael Blake and I, who actually was in Grammatrain for a little bit, we were a 4-piece for a brief time. We were really good friends and we had wanted to work together for a long time. And we started a band called Gideons Press, which was not as heavy as Grammatrain, but I would say the music was really intense. And it started out as a Christian band. And then we moved to Austin, and Michael Blake, he recanted his faith, which really hurt. I hurt for him, but it just hurt. It was just, I'm in another band with a problem, and we worked so hard to get our following. The music was really good. Some of the best drumming I've ever done in my life is on the Gideons Press, and the next album we did, we called ourselves the Illustrated Band. The lyrics in that were positive, borderlining, kind of new agey, I guess. And that's when I started finding that working that hard on a project that's not a Christian project, and this is not slamming anyone else who's doing secular stuff at all, but that was the beginning of me learning that for me, if I was going to work that hard on something, it needed to have something to offer more than just entertainment. When I'm at the end of my years and I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking at my life and I'm looking at the money spent and the sacrifices that I make and that my family make, and these days that my kids have to make as well, it just has to mean something. It can't just be to make a buck or to entertain people. And I think this second time was when Grammatrain got back together. We had a reunion, and we did a record that was not a Christian record, but it was safe. Pete was in a place where he could write lyrics that weren't going to offend Dalton and I. And it was a great record, and we had a great time doing it, but I don't want to take anything away from the Grammatrain fans that love that album. I think it's a great album, but it's sort of empty for me. And then touring, I was a hired gun for people that were not Christian bands, and I was making money and doing prestigious stuff. But I saw my Christianity just slowly start to plummet. There was a band I was in, and really, I won't say who, but it was just a very dark tour. We were on a bus and everything, but a lot of complaining, and just there was no camaraderie in the band. Everyone was there for the money, and so I was alone a lot. I just started beer here, beer there. And the last gig on this tour, another confession here. I had a beer at like 4:00 with my lunch, and I just kept having drinks, and people while we were playing were sending drinks up to the stage. And since I'm not really an experienced drinker, I'm playing and I'd have a shot and whatever, and I was kind of angry and depressed. And again, this is another shameful moment, but I don't mind being honest about this. I drank so much that I don't remember what happened that evening. My friends in the band told me, don't worry, nothing bad happened. They had to carry my gear out. And I woke up with a hangover, and I was scared to death because I couldn't remember leaving the club. And that terrified me. That absolutely terrified me. And I was actually praying with a friend of mine that I was having a kind of a weekly Bible study with. And I said, man, I'm thinking about leaving this band because I feel like they're having more of an effect on me than I'm having on them. And I just there was no, I wasn't doing any drugs. I wasn't messing around with girls or anything like that. It was just the darkness of it and the drinking and stuff. And I said, I don't want to quit. I need an answer from God. I need to know if I'm supposed to step up and stay in the band. Would God say, no, step up, stay in the band and be a light? Or is he saying, Paul, you just got to get out of this? And I said, I need an answer. And while we were talking, my phone rang and I just let it go to voicemail, but it was the guy from this band. And that was him telling me, he said, I think I'm going to go with someone. They wanted somebody a little more eclectic. And he was right. I'm not an extremely eclectic drummer. I'm more of a hard rock drummer. And he had a speech ready. And I was telling him, I'm like, man, it's okay. It's okay. But he really wanted to get through a speech, because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. I'm like, man, you don't understand. Like, this is okay. I think this is God, like, giving me an answer, because I was kind of trying to figure out my place in all of this. And that was the last time for me. Like, I think I just need to be around good people. I'm not saying I would never tour with a secular band again, but they would have to be good, just good guys, that aren't into anything that I want to stay away from, And from then on, it's just been like, okay, everything I do with my music has to have some sort of an internal element to it that's going to change someone's life or open somebody's eyes to something. Well, first of all, I never predetermine what I'm going to write about ever. I can't. I've tried to say, I'm going to write a song about this, or I'm going to write a song about this. And I sit there and I might get 4 lines out or something. It just has to come to me. And when I'm burdened, I've noticed when I'm hurt or angry, that's when I tend to pick up my pen and I just start writing what I'm angry about or what's on my heart. And sometimes, again, it can only be 4 lines, and sometimes it's just go, 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 go. And it's just, there's been times where I've written almost, an entire song, even though I know it needs to be fixed up, but the thoughts are all there. And I need to go back and tailor it and work on it. But I just happen to be really watching what's going on with the progressive church and seeing people that I really care about. I mean, these people, they're good people. They're nice people. They mean well, most of them. And a lot of them don't know that they're deceived, and that when they're teaching these people that they're deceiving others, with the Gnosticism that's creeping in. And this is where, the Enneagram comes in on the cover. I don't know if you can see it. The Enneagram is in the ohms sign. The ohm stands for resistance in electronics. And I've got the Enneagram in there. Kind of, to me, the Enneagram, the fact is, it comes from the occult. It comes from other religions. It's the personality tests on the Enneagram came to Oscar Chazo like in the 60s or something. And it came from automatic writing, which is where he just let his mind and just go to the spirits. He was very much into the spirit world. He was not a Christian. And it's like a Ouija board, like using a Ouija board. His hands just wrote these personality tests. And then he said through observation, he saw that this was right and good. And with all the research I've done, to me, it's pretty simple. Like, at the same time, I don't think there's any coincidence that in the same era where the progressive Christian church is taking your Bible and saying, we need to doubt some of this. We need to start ripping some pages out, and we need to add some of our own. The authority is here and here, not here. At the same time that's happening, the authority is being handed to these triangles, and the personality profiles that go along with it that were handed to us from Satan. And people are afraid to say Satan because you think of the church lady on Satan.
Yeah, could it be Satan?
Satan's done a very good job at making us afraid to talk about him, and we shouldn't become obsessed with him. But God works in mysterious ways, but so does the devil. And he is the great deceiver. He deceived a third of heaven to leave to fight God and try to take him on. I mean, if he can deceive a third of heaven, I mean, what are we, And so through the Enneagram and the progressive church, talk about teachers that tell you what your itching ears want to hear, that's what's going on. And it was hurting me. It was just killing me. And I just started penning this stuff out. The song, actually, Faith of Least Resistance, I think that's the one. That one particularly is written, I almost called it Faith of Least Resistance, and then in parentheses, a letter to Richard Rohr, or Dear Richard. He's sort of the kind of lead instigator with a lot of this stuff. He's responsible for leading a lot of people astray. And I'm just watching what he's doing. I just can't believe so many people are falling for it. And it's killing me. So Richard, if you're watching this, I wrote you a song. It's called Faith of Least Resistance. So yeah. And so some of those songs on the second half of the album is kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a concept.
Concept, yeah.
They're kind of all written about the same thing. And it's just trying to wake up the church and saying, please, like, look at what you're doing here. This isn't a good path to go down. It's getting away from scripture and getting into all this other weird stuff, letting external spiritual entities guide you, and then giving that the authority. The personalities from the Enneagram is all about you. I mean, the people that are into this stuff always end up going in Gnostic directions, and the power is coming from within yourself. And they're saying you don't need religion, you don't need God. It's all right here, and you can fix everything here and here. And so, yeah, you're right about that. There was definitely some kind of a burden going on. I don't know if my next record will be the same, but if I started writing my lyrics today, it would be, because I'm very much declaring war on the Enneagram and on the theology of the progressive church, not the people. The people are so full of love, and they're amazing people, super, super loving. I would argue maybe loving people more than God, even kind of getting that a little out of balance, and loving and fearing man over God. If I'm struggling with something, I don't need someone in my church to put their arm around me and say, hey man, I'm glad that you struggle with pornography or whatever. I'm glad that you found yourself, you go, I wouldn't want to hear that. I would need someone to say, can I get you some help? I love you. I'm not going to hate you, but can I get you some help? Or if you're having an affair or whatever. But these days I feel like the pastor could be having a affair with the secretary, and some people would just be like, well, everyone just kind of goes down their own road, and whatever. And it's getting a little weird out there.
Right.
And I'll be honest, there's a part of me that was scared to death to release this record, because I know that this is it's gonna hurt some people. It's gonna offend some people who are friends of mine, and that's not what I want. But I just can't. There's a line in here that said, in one of the songs, that says, how long shall I wait to take a step forward or walk away? That's been on my mind for the last few years in this area. Like, at what point am I going to either take a step forward and address this and speak out against it, and just take the potential wrath of mankind that can come my way, and just, or when am I just going to walk away from it, step away from it, and just let it do what it's going to do, and just have no part of it? And I prayed and prayed, and it just, I couldn't, I didn't have peace about walking away from it. Whatever the consequences may be, I had to write this record.
So
I think God's used the messed up part of me to help me to do this. And by that, let me explain. I grew up, I had a problem with authority growing up, because the people in my life, from either people in my family or, in school, twice I got beat up by a bully, And because I was the one that had, my parents would just brush my hair. They didn't know it was curly. They'd give me a bowl cut, brush it. It was a mess. My clothes were dirty. I'd go to school, and the kid with the nice shirt, that's dressed all nice, always picking on me. And one time he was trying to beat me up. We got in a fight. We go to the principal's office, and I'm the one that gets the paddle, and because the other kid's trying to say I started it. And I'm not a violent person at all. And I've had everything happen from that to getting tickets for things I didn't do from police officers. Thank God one of my best friends is a police officer, and someone else who's a mentor of mine was also a police officer. So I got to see police officers who were really great people. So I know they weren't all like that. But I had long hair. I looked like Dee Snider. My hair was all one length. And I drove a 72 Gran Torino Sport. And my friend explained to me, he said, when they see a guy with long hair driving a muscle car, they assume you're probably drinking and doing drugs and this and that, and you're going to get their attention, because culturally that was true. Most of the people in Bremerton, Washington, where I was living at that time, that looked like me were getting into a lot of trouble. And so, yeah, I got a ticket for running a light that I did not run. I didn't run. There was 3 cop cars there, and hassling me and stuff. And so there was been so much abuse of authority for me that it's kind of made me, it's given me this little, like, I don't mind kind of sticking it to the man a little bit, and what we were talking about earlier with the music and how the music, it was always been about the experience for me. So I'll admit, I'm kind of an angry person sometimes, and the stuff has made me angry. And I see this authority like twisting the word and teaching these people these heresies and stuff. And I want to fight back. Like, I take it personally. And so I guess, all things work together for the good for those who love God. And I do love God. So I guess all these bad things I went through, maybe God has shaped my character a little bit to be able to, not worry about the kind of things that come along with doing this. I started reading a lot of old English books. I'm terrible with names and numbers. It's a problem for me. But like the Three Musketeers, and what's the author's name? Gosh, so many good books. I can't remember the titles, but I just fell in love with this old English writing and how clever and beautiful it was. And I started falling in love with the hymns, because a lot of the writing in the hymns is just so beautiful. In fact, on my last record, I had a book of hymns, and if I saw a line I really liked, I'd write it down in my notebook. And so when I went back to my notebook, I would like take some of these lines, and sometimes I would just leave them as they are, because it's free domain, put in my song. And then, or I would manipulate it to fit the rest of the song. And so there's actually some lines in Light Me On that came from hymns, because I really love the way the hymns and the way they talked back then and wrote. They were so deep, and there was such a genuine broken love for God in some of those hymns. They were so cool. When I started playing drums 13-ish, and for my 15th birthday, I begged my parents for hi-hats. I wanted a nice pair of hi-hats. And my dad kept saying, no, you need a guitar, you need to get a guitar, you need, learn to play more than one instrument. Then I was like, no, please don't get me a guitar. I really want hi-hats, So for my birthday, I was sure I was going to get hi-hats, and they got me a guitar. And I acted grateful, but I was furious. And so I had a guitar for many years, and I would pick it up and dabble. And there were times where I'd play it for a few months, and then it would sit for years, and I'd pick it up. And so I just, but it was right around 2004, 2005 is when, after going through everything I'd been through, working so hard to start a band and being at the mercy of the front man, usually, if someone like the front man quits your band, it's over. Like, you can't just start over. And so I just thought, I'm just going to see. And I'm telling you, I begged God. There's the two biggest things in my life that I begged God for. One, I begged for twins. On my face for months, I begged God to give me twins. And so it's a long story. I'll tell you that some other time. But it really was something that meant something to me. It was huge. And I know that God knew that it meant something to me. And out here in the studio, on my face, on the floor, just please, God, give me my twins. And no fertility drugs, no twins in the family. God gave me my twins. And that miracle has really helped me to feel significant to God. You know, when things are rough, when I wonder if God cares about, like when I think, does God really care about me making my mortgage payment this month? People are dying and watching their children suffer in other parts of the country. Who am I to think God cares about this? You know, that was kind of part of my struggle. And I feel like God just showed me that I'm significant, you know. And the other thing was I begged God to give me the ability to make music and to give me a voice and help me write lyrics and to get good on the guitar. And at that point, I hated computers. I didn't want anything to do with computers. All I could do was check email. I hated doing that. And I'm thinking, man, I got a lot of work to do here. And I just took it one day at a time. And I just begged God, begged him and begged him and begged him. And by the power of God, by the love of God, by the grace of God, here I am, and writing music that I can be very happy with and feel like I'm really doing something for God. And I know that musically, I don't want to sound prideful, but I know that it's good, you know. And I'm writing music that I wish someone had written for me. Like I'm writing for the guys like me out there. Like to me, the Christian music industry has always, and again, this is not a slam on any of the worship artists out there. I believe they're doing what God called them to do, you know. But that's sort of the 99 to me. And I'm kind of the one that is different from everybody else. And I really need something like Rush or something that just has more to offer. And nobody's really doing that. I mean, there's some of it out there, but it's very few. And so for me, I've always written for myself first. I try to write music that I feel like I can listen to for the rest of my life. I'm not trying to get a hit on the radio or please anybody else but myself. And so since I have tried to please myself, I feel like I can say that I think this is a good record because I wrote what I wanted to hear, and I was successful. Well, my older influences are some of the classic bands. You know, Pink Floyd was huge for me. Loved Pink Floyd. That's again one of those bands that just takes you somewhere. Rush, yes. Led Zeppelin to some extent when I was younger, but more so as I've, you know, gotten older. Supertramp. I had the Live in Paris album, and I couldn't stop listening to that. Such a beautiful record, recorded wonderfully. It's a really amazing sounding record. More. I tended to not listen to the radio a lot. I would just, like, for a while, I think I pretty much just listened to Rush and 86 everything for years. Okay. And then slowly started, you know, and then in the 80s I got into I'm a little embarrassed to say this because of their hit song. I got into Winger because those guys were good musicians. Like those guys are stellar musicians. I have
all of their releases. I'm embarrassed to say too, I'm a big Winger nut. They're phenomenal.
They're great. And you know, I think of that song, you know, She's Only 17, and the lyrics are just so terrible and cheesy, and the message is not good, you know. But their music isn't all like that. And I'm not going to say they're a progressive rock band, but they're very good musicians, and their tones are stellar, you know, and it's ear candy to listen to some of their other songs. I haven't listened to them in years, you know, but I did really like Winger. I never got into the 80s, like, you know, Rat and Motley Crue and stuff like that. Forgive me, but I was just never into those bands in the 80s. It was still Rush for me, you know. But more modern, I guess I'd say Porcupine Tree. I love Porcupine Tree. Yeah, that guy's a genius. They're a little dark, sadly, but And my favorite singer in the whole world, people are always shocked to hear this, Lacey Sturm from Flyleaf.
Oh,
She was
amazing.
originally, she's my favorite voice in the world. I wish I could get her to sing on a record. I left her a voicemail, never heard back, and I didn't want to bug her, so I didn't keep calling. But I would just be so honored to have her sing with me on a song. Her voice is just the most incredible. I just think she's the most incredible singer on the planet. If I could sing like her, I would sing like her. And I don't like the screamo stuff, but she does it, and I love it when she does it. You know, another artist that I really appreciated in my teenage years. Oh, and I did actually. I don't want to forget Petra. I in high school, you know, Beat the System, Not of This World, More Power to You. Those albums carried me through some rough times. Like the lyrics, and those guys are talented too. And of course, Greg X Volz, he's just got an amazing voice.
Yeah.
I could say he's one of my favorite vocalists. And
he has not lost a step. He still sounds just as good.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
And Amy Grant, don't judge me. I was a big Amy Grant fan, but you know what appealed me to her was also her I sensed something very real about her in her lyrics. Well, like the song, she's basically singing about the temptation to have an affair. And what female Christian artist is allowed to do that? I mean, she's just putting it out there. She's human. And
wonderful storyteller.
Yeah. And I mean, people can say what they want about her for, you know, all the stuff that happened with her divorce and whatever, but you like, you know, in the words of Les Carlson, you know, when we were talking about that earlier, people make mistakes, and I don't ever approve of divorce, you know, unless there's, you know, adultery and stuff. But at the same time, you don't know what somebody's going through, and you don't know what their threshold is for what they can take. And I will never put my arm around someone and say, I'm really glad you got a divorce because this just didn't work out. But at the same time, I've never condemned any of my friends and said, shame on you, you terrible person, because you got a divorce. That's between them and God. You know, it's a sin, it needs to be dealt with, but they need to deal with it between them and God. I do believe people can move on and get remarried and start fresh and be forgiven, and whatever God determines the consequences are, you know, on earth, whether it's just the pain of having to share your kids or the financial burdens that come along with it, or perhaps the regret in some cases, you know, I don't know, but that's between them and God.
No, I agree. What I just preached a sermon on what love is in the agape sense, and how it's not a feeling, it's our decision to stand by someone regardless. And I think today's church, especially when it comes to divorce and things like that, is sadly lacking that agape love, where I'll stand beside you no matter what you're going through. Actually, Dream Theater, not a Christian band, but they have a song called I Walk Beside You that I swear every Christian, that should be their theme song, you know.
I'm gonna listen to that one. That's another more modern influence. Well, I got into them back in the day, but when Mangini joined the band, I had to check it out.
Jeez.
And in fact, I would say they've influenced this record. You might be able to hear a little bit of it. I'm not going to try to say I sound anything like those guys because they're so amazing. But the heaviness of this record, a lot of that came from me listening to some Dream Theater lately.
Yeah, that is by far my favorite band ever. I've seen them 6-7 times now, and followed them since they're even before Labrie joined, their very first record. And because they sounded so much like Rush, that's what I got into it for, you know.
Well, the musicianship is just when the guitar lines are going along with the keyboards, and they're so tight, and they're playing all this really complex stuff.
It is.
Tell me the name of that song again. I want to write it down because I wanted to go back and visit it.
I Walk Beside You.
I Walk Beside You.
Yeah, or I'll walk. It's either I Walk Beside You or I'll Walk Beside You. And it's very simple. It's not their typical prog, you know, 28 time changes and, you know, in a couple of minutes. It's not like that at all. It's more in the lines of almost like a U2 sounding song, but it is solid, and the lyrics are just fantastic. So don't get me started on Dream Theater. We'll talk all day. Are you a Kansas fan? I was.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Kansas. Yeah, since I was a teenager, love Kansas.
What year did you graduate high school, by the way?
what year was I supposed to graduate, or what year did I finally get out of there?
What year were you supposed to graduate? That's a good one.
Let's just say I was supposed, I'll give you the short story. Let's just say I was supposed to graduate in 84. We'll kind of leave it.
Okay. So we're about the same age. I was supposed to graduate in 85, graduate in 86. So yeah, so we're the same age. So we have that same musical background, I guess, so to speak, as far as what we
I had a lot of fun my second senior year. The funny thing is, I really only came back because there was just a couple more credits that I needed, and I didn't do well in school. Nobody was at home to make me do my homework. I call myself sort of a functional ADD. You know, back then we didn't know what it was, but I have a hard time concentrating, and I struggle trying to learn things sometimes. Music comes a little easier for me, I guess, than a lot of things, but I have a report card that sums me up, because my second senior year, I could take a lot of electives because I was only taking a couple other classes. One of those classes was practical English, which is English for dummies, basically. And it was like a D- or something. And then I had 4 music classes, and they were all A's. So it was like the 4 music classes were A, English for dummies, D-, and then A for, and I've kept that credit card. I mean, that report card, because it just really sums,
Yeah.
sadly, for better or for worse, kind of, you know. And I'm not just being hard on myself. I really do struggle with a lot of things outside of music. I mean, I can keep a job and I can work hard and, you know, that kind of thing. But this is kind of what I do. And this is, I like to think that God gave me this ability for a reason, and I shouldn't be too hard on myself that I can't do these other things, because this is what God wants me to do here.